Hi, Room 2. I'm going to be doing the math lesson for week 2, day 1. And this is what our page looks like in our packet. We are continuing with equal shares. These are also called fractions. And today our focus is on identifying the difference between halves and quarters. Quarters we also call fourths. That's going to be our focus today. And before I get our robot helper on, I want to point out what halves and fourths are. This is a whole, and again, I always like to think of a pizza or a pie, something that I might share with somebody. So if this is my whole pizza and I divide it into halves, my blues are showing halves. The pizza is split into 2 parts. Okay, so I have 2 equal shares when I split it into halves. So maybe Maya and I could share it, right? Just 2 people. And then look what happens when 4 people are sharing it. They're going to get equal shares, but fourths are smaller. So you're going to get this little slice compared to the big blue slice. So halves, you're dividing it less times between fewer people, but the pieces are bigger. Fourths, you're going to have more pieces, but they are smaller. So we want to make sure we understand the difference between half of a whole and a quarter of a whole, what that means. So let's have some help from our robot helper. He's going to give us some good visuals. Let me get him on the screen with us. Here he is.
Pizzas come in different sizes, but they are usually sliced in wedges through the middle. They can be sliced into different numbers of shares. These pizzas are the same size. This pizza is cut into 4 equal shares. Each share is 1/4 of the whole. This pizza is cut into 2 equal shares. Each share is 1/2 of the whole. How many fourths make 1 whole?
Okay, looking at the fourths, how many does it take to get 1 whole pizza? Well, we can count them. 1, 2, 3, 4 fourths.
1, 2, 3, 4. 4 fourths make 1 whole. How many halves make 1 whole?
Look at our halves, and how many halves does it take to make 1 whole? 1, 2.
1, 2. 2 halves make 1 whole. If you were very hungry, would you want a piece of the pizza that is cut into halves or fourths? Why?
I'm going to read that question again. If you were very hungry, would you want a piece of the pizza that is cut into halves or fourths? Why? Let's go ahead and do the try it. Select a number of equal parts to divide the circle. And again, we can think about it being a pizza. So if I split it into 2 equal parts,
the circle shows halves.
That's what it's going to look like. So if I'm really hungry, am I going to want this size of a wedge or slice? or this size? Here comes 3 equal parts.
The circle shows thirds.
My pieces are getting smaller.
The circle shows fourths.
Now 4 equal parts, the pieces are getting smaller still. How about 5 equal parts?
The circle shows fifths.
Ooh, my pieces are getting smaller, skinnier.
The circle
Oops.
shows sixths.
6th, and let's see what 7 equal parts looks like.
The circle shows sevenths.
Those are tiny slices. And
The circle shows eighths.
8ths. Look how skinny those slices are.
You would want a piece of the pizza that is cut into halves. A half would be larger than a fourth. The pizza with fourths has smaller shares. The pizza with halves has fewer shares. If you had to share a pizza with 3 other people, would you cut the pizza into halves or fourths?
Select your answer.
Okay, what do you think? If you had to share a pizza with 3 other people, so that's yourself and then 3 other people, would you cut the pizza into halves, which is over here, or fourths over here? Fourths would make sense because it would be you getting a piece and the 1, 2, 3 other people.
You would cut the pizza into fourths. That is the only way you would have enough for everyone to have a piece.
Now you have seen how halves and fourths are related.
All right, so I zoomed in a little bit closer so you could see my paper. About as good as I can get right now. So week 2, day 1, and I like how at the top it's showing me the difference between equal shares if I divide it into 4 or equal shares if I divide it into 2. So here for the show me, it's just something that we're going to talk about and think about. We're not going to write anything. It says, David has a sandwich. Is half of the sandwich more or less food than 1/4 of the sandwich? And it says explain. So looking at the pizzas, we saw that half of a pizza is a bigger piece than just 1/4 of a pizza. Half of a pizza is bigger than 1/4. So is half of the sandwich more or less? That would be more than 1/4 of the sandwich. Now over here, the directions we need to look at very carefully. We're going to be circling one picture, crossing off the other. It says circle the shape that has more equal parts. More equal parts. Oh, equal shares is the word, sorry. Put an X on the shape that has larger equal shares, so the pieces are larger. So for the example, they circled the one divided into fourths because it has more equal shares. It has 1, 2, 3, 4 equal shares. The one next to it, the halves, this one's crossed off because the shape has larger equal shares. Those halves are bigger. So that's what we're going to do for the rest of these. Okay, we're circling the one that has more equal shares. So with my 2 circles here, more equal shares, that's going to be these quarters. Crossing off the one that has larger equal shares. Halves are larger. So I cross that one off. Next, this side has fourths. So this one has more equal shares. And then the halves have larger equal shares. And last, we have quarters on this side, halves over here. Well, my quarters has more equal shares, and my halves has larger equal shares. Okay, I'm going to be turning my page. This is more of the independent practice, but I'm going to read through some of these. Number 5 says, draw a line to divide this shape in half. Well, there's more than one way to divide this rectangle in half, right? I could go diagonal, could split it down, I could go across. You get to choose, but we're splitting it in half so that 2 people would get the same amount. I'm going to go right down the middle. Number 6 says shade 1/4 of this shape. So shade means I'm going to color it in. You can use color if you want. I'm just going to use my pen. But 1 of the quarters, I'm going to shade in this one. And then number 7, you can see I had to kind of scratch out some of the wording because it was about colors. You can't see the colors here that it wanted. So it says draw lines in the 2 square. I'm calling this the number 2 square to make smaller equal shares than in the 1 square. So what that means is if I look in 1, this is split into halves. Square 2, I need to make more equal shares. So I could do fourths. One way to make fourths would be to go across for halves and then make each of those halves another half. So now I have 4 equal shares. The last one I'm going to be doing with you is the bottom one here. It says, Joan cuts a rectangle into 2 equal shares. Then she cuts each share in half. How many equal shares are there now? What are these shares called? Use words or pictures to explain. So I'm going to use the rectangle that they give us, and I'm going to follow these directions at the beginning. Joan cuts a rectangle into 2 equal shares. So I'm going to cut my rectangle into 2 equal shares. I'm going to go top to bottom. That's one way to do it. Then she cuts each share in half. So this share gets cut in half, and this share. How many equal shares are there now? So down here is where I'm going to be writing that information. There are 4 equal shares. What are these shares called? So once I have 4 equal shares, what are they called? Well, they can be called a couple things. They could be called fourths. They could also be called quarters. I'm going to use the word fourths on mine. They are fourths. So down here I put they are fourths. So you have one more page in the math packet for today. Tomorrow's math is practicing this same skill, and then I will be doing a new lesson on Wednesday. Please let me know if you have any questions.